Thanksgiving weekend. I'd spent the whole afternoon cooking Claire's favorite dishes, setting the table just the way she liked it. But once again, she didn't show. For a moment, I just sat there, silent. Then, almost out of habit, I opened Instagram and pulled up her ex, Miles. A brand new post had just gone up. Shout out to someone special, mentioned my shoulder was sore and she ditched her boyfriend to come help. Prioritizing friendship over romance, a rare quality these days. Keep it up. The photo underneath hit me like a slap. Claire was on his couch, giving him a massage. Miles's head was resting lazily on her lap, his cheek brushing against her thigh. She didn't push him away. Didn't flinch. She just sat there, with a faint, unreadable smile at the corner of her lips. The image was unbearable. But I didn't react the way I used to. No outbursts. No accusations. No begging. I just hit the like button. Then calmly sent her a message. We're done. Claire didn't believe it. She actually laughed and said to her friends. Oh, he's just being dramatic. Let him stew for a few days. He'll come crawling back the second I lift a finger. She had no idea. I used to forgive her so easily because I loved her. But this time, there was nothing left in me to be soothed. The breakup text went unanswered, like a rock dropped in deep water. But then, Miles sent me a video. It looked like a private room in some bar or lounge, loud with laughter. Claire's friends were hyping her up. Claire, are you seriously letting Aaron go after 7 years? You don't think he's actually ending things, right? Claire was slicing a mango cake, her tone light, almost bored. He's just trying to guilt me into going back. I was planning to leave after helping Miles with his shoulder, but now that he's pulling this crap. Forget it. Let him sit in it for a while. Then she lifted a bite of cake toward Miles's mouth. New release from my favorite dessert place. Try it. Tell me if you like it. Her friends burst into teasing laughter. Aaron was always a stand-in anyway, just dump him already. Now that Miles is back in the picture, why not make it official? Come on, Miles, Claire's heart's been yours all along. Claire didn't respond. She just stared at him, eyes full of something fierce and raw. Miles chuckled, tapped her nose playfully, and said, "What are you guys talking about? Claire and I are just friends. Go patch things up with your boyfriend before people start thinking I'm the bad guy here." Something shifted in Claire's gaze, just slightly. "Relax," she said, her voice faintly brittle. "All I have to do is lift a finger, he'll come back." I watched the whole thing blankly. I'd told myself I was ready to let go. But that didn't stop the hollow ache that bloomed in my chest. After all, she was the girl I fell for at first sight, the one I loved for 7 whole years. It was Thanksgiving our freshman year when I finally confessed. I knew she was the type to keep her distance. Ice cold, always turning guys down without hesitation. So I didn't expect anything. I just didn't want to graduate with regrets. But under the soft moonlight, she looked at me for a long time. Then she smiled, slow and radiant, and said, "Well then. I guess you're stuck with me for life." I thought I'd never forget how that moment felt, how my heart nearly jumped out of my chest. And yet, that memory started to rot the night she kissed me, breathless and warm, and whispered "Miles" against my lips. I froze. It was our first real fight. 3 days later, she showed up at my door with a tiny cake in hand and shadows under her eyes. He was just someone I dated before. "That's all," she murmured. I gave in. I always did when it came to her. Because I believed Miles was history. And I was her boyfriend, her present, her future. For 4 years in college, I loved her with everything I had. After graduation, I followed her to a city I'd never known, cut ties with my family without looking back. And she was good to me too. Always the first to bring me new releases from my favorite dessert shop. Carefully drying my hair. Ironing my shirts. Every anniversary gift perfectly chosen, no flowery words, just a quiet kind of warmth. I really believed we'd go from campus to chapel. Grow old together. Then, 6 months ago, Miles came back. And with one careless line, he shattered everything. Damn. You really found a boyfriend who looks just like me. After that, the truth unraveled, slow and cruel. She didn't say yes to me because she loved me. She said yes because she missed out on him. The cake she always bought me. His favorite brand. The gentle things she did for me. Words she'd once heard him say about what he hoped his dream girl would be like. I wasn't her partner. I was a placeholder. A warm-up act. A training dummy for the real show. I remembered what she said once, back when everything still felt real. Aaron, when we hit 7 years, let's get married, okay? You gave up everything for me. After this, every Thanksgiving, we'll spend together. This Thanksgiving marks exactly 7 years. But clearly, she forgot. Maybe that's for the best. Because I'm going home. To get married, too. The clock struck midnight. Claire still hadn't come home. In the past, that would have left me wide awake, staring at the ceiling, running through 100 scenarios in my head. But tonight, I slept surprisingly well. Maybe letting go of someone who doesn't deserve you is also a way of finally being kind to yourself. It was the clatter of pots and pans that woke me early the next morning. I sat up, groggy, confused by the unfamiliar noise, until I caught sight of her. Claire. Wearing an apron. Standing at the stove, flipping steak with those long, pale arms of hers. Let's have a make-up Thanksgiving, she said, casually tasting a slice of meat right off the spatula. Not bad. I just stared at her, stunned. She glanced back at me, eyebrows slightly lifted, waiting. And in that moment, I understood. This was her way of smoothing things over. She was giving me a chance to cave. To play along. To make it easy again. That used to work. Used to be enough. But not anymore. I shook my head. You don't have to. No need to redo Thanksgiving. No need to make this look like fixing something. Her smile faltered. A faint crease appeared between her brows. She turned, pulled out a cake box, and pushed it across the counter without looking at me. Your favorite. I looked down. Mango cake. Same one as always. Sliced, half-eaten, neatly wrapped in that familiar way. A dull sting hit my chest. The truth was, I didn't even really like sweets. What used to feel sweet was the thought behind it, her thought. But after 7 years, she still remembered every one of Miles's preferences. And somehow forgot I was allergic to mangoes. I stared in silence, that slow, heavy kind of realization settling in. This whole relationship hadn't been what I thought it was. Claire's eyes darkened with irritation. She was trying to keep her composure, but her patience was wearing thin. Okay, enough, she said, voice clipped. I've already given you more than enough chances to let this go. You keep pushing, there won't be another. If Miles hadn't talked me into it, I wouldn't have come back to patch things up at all. Next time. Don't say you want to break up. Got it? So that was it. Even this entire morning, was for Miles. I drew in a breath. Steady. Certain. Claire, I said softly, I mean it this time. I'm really done. I'm going to break up. Go home. Get married. But before I could finish, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and answered immediately. Miles? Her voice shifted, softened, warm. lips curving into a smile. Yeah, I'll head over now. She hung up. The warmth vanished. She turned to me without expression. Miles needs something. I'm heading out. And just like always. She didn't wait for an answer. She just walked away. But this time, I didn't freeze. I didn't watch her walk away, hoping she'd look back. With nothing else to do, I headed to the office. I figured I might as well start wrapping things up before handing in my resignation. A few more days, and I'd be gone from this city for good. Cleaning up my files now would make the transition easier later. It wasn't until early evening that I left the building. Instead of going home, I took a detour to a well-known restaurant nearby. The place was famous not just for its food, but for its reputation. They said couples who took a photo here would stay together for life. I'd tried to bring Claire here before, several times, actually. But she was always too busy. Now that I was leaving this city behind, I figured I'd go alone. But the moment I walked in, I saw them. Claire and Miles. Sitting side by side. Close. Intimate. The table was filled with all the things she supposedly didn't eat. Spicy dishes, seafood. She always said she couldn't handle heat. Hated the smell of shellfish. So I adapted. Adjusted. Always made sure she felt catered to. Turns out, she had someone else she was willing to adapt for. They hadn't noticed me. I stood there, watching as he pushed a half-eaten prawn toward her mouth. So good. Here, have the rest, he said, gently brushing her lips with his fingers. Claire blushed. Actually blushed. I'd always remembered her as cold, aloof, like moonlight you couldn't touch. But there she was. 25 years old and glowing with the bashfulness of a teenage girl in love. Because this time, she was looking at someone she truly wanted. Miles, she said casually, trying to play it off. Let's take a picture together. She smiled, but her eyes were full of nervous anticipation. He didn't answer. Just nudged her playfully, then suddenly looked up. Right at me. That look. A grin curled at the corner of his mouth, amused, smug, like he was watching a show. He was waiting for me to fall apart. Again. And why wouldn't he? It wouldn't be the first time. Valentine's Day, he made one call, and Claire left me to help him finish a PowerPoint. When I had pneumonia and was hospitalized with a 104 degrees fever, she chose to comfort him because he was having a rough week. There were nights she ran out at 2 a.m. because he didn't answer his texts. Only to end up drinking wine and lying on his bed, talking until sunrise. I'd screamed. Begged. Cried in ways I'm still ashamed of. She'd always respond the same way. Stop making a scene. All those times she refused to come to this restaurant with me. It wasn't about timing. Or traffic. Or stress. She just never wanted to take that photo with me. And somehow, that realization didn't shatter me this time. Because now I understand. When someone doesn't care about you, they'll never notice your pain. They'll just call it noise. I looked at them calmly. Why are you looking at me? You want me to take your picture? Claire blinked. For a second, she looked caught, then her expression snapped into anger. Aaron, are you following us? What's with the sarcasm? You're the one who insisted on breaking up. I gave you an out and you didn't take it. I'm just having dinner with an old friend, taking a photo. What exactly is your problem? Do you know how suffocating this behavior is? You're only pushing me further away. She rarely said that much to me in one breath. Not because she cared. But because she felt exposed. Didn't matter anymore. I kept my voice even. I'm just here to eat. And for the record, we're already over. Whatever you two do now is none of my business. Miles raised an eyebrow. My calm caught him off guard. Come on, Aaron, he said smoothly. No need to say things you don't mean. I told Claire I didn't have much of an appetite today, that's the only reason she spent the day with me. But don't overthink it. We're just friends. The smirk in his eyes made his words ring hollow. I used to wonder. If he didn't want her, why did he keep her dangling? Why go through all the motions? Now, I didn't care. Let them play their games. Without another glance, I walked to an empty table, one that faced away from them, sat down, and opened the menu. In the past, stumbling into a scene like this would have made me bolt, embarrassed and broken. But I hadn't done anything wrong. All I wanted was a meal I'd looked forward to for years. I wasn't going to throw that away because of them. So I ordered freely. Everything I liked. For once, I didn't have to accommodate anyone. I was proud of that. I didn't miss the food this time just because I'd once missed the point. I couldn't see them anymore, but their voices reached me anyway, loud and clear. When did you get so cold? Claire asked. You used to be amazing at cheering people up. There was a soft, familiar pat-pat sound. Didn't have to look, I knew it was Miles, tapping her shoulder playfully. Remember in middle school when I bombed that algebra test? I'd find a bouquet of daisies on my desk every morning, my favorite. Took me weeks to realize it was you, trying to help me bounce back. And in 9th grade, when I was freaking out about finals? You used to leave me quotes from famous writers every day, said it would inspire me and double as writing practice. In high school, you brought me breakfast every morning. Walked me home in the rain. Set midnight alarms to help me score those limited edition sneakers. So why can't you be that patient with your boyfriend now? Every word was laced with smug nostalgia. Rhetorical superiority disguised as wistful recollection. Claire went quiet. Then her voice came, sharp with resentment. He's not you. I kept eating, eyes on my plate. The chili oil stung so much it nearly made me tear up. 7 years. And this. This was the sentence I got in return. I'd asked myself 1,000 times what I did wrong. Was I not attentive enough? Not romantic enough? Too ordinary? But now I knew. It wasn't me. She'd handed her love to someone else long before I ever stood a chance. And even now, after everything, she still hadn't let go of him. So maybe it's finally time I let go of her, too. After that day, Claire didn't come home. It was her usual tactic whenever we fought. No explanation. No apology. Just silence. She knew what it did to me. The gnawing self-doubt. The anxious spirals. I'd sit in the wreckage, blaming myself for everything. Then, a few days later, she'd show up with some half-hearted excuse, a gentle smile. And just like that, we'd fall back into place. The pain had always come from loving her too much. But this time, I didn't feel anything. Just quiet. I started packing. The apartment was still filled with the remnants of us. Matching towels. Dual toothbrush holders. Prints I'd framed to match her aesthetic. The coffee mugs with inside jokes we didn't laugh at anymore. And yet, as I moved through the rooms, I realized. Almost nothing here actually belonged to me. Somehow, I'd spent years living in a space that never reflected who I was. Somehow, I'd forgotten how to live as myself. 3 days later, I officially resigned from my job. My supervisor signed the paperwork without hesitation. So, heading back to Harbor City, he said with a grin. Heard things are getting serious with Miss Vance. I paused, then shook my head. I'm going back alone. He laughed like he didn't believe me. Come on, don't play coy. My buddy works in HR over at Chandler Corporation, said Miss Vance is transferring to the harbor headquarters. Even filed a spousal relocation request. I mean, really, why else would she uproot her entire setup? You're a top-tier grad working a basic admin job in a tiny firm. It's about time your life turned around, huh? I froze. Claire had never mentioned a word of this. We'd both studied design. Pushed through long nights and brutal deadlines side by side. But at some point, she'd started climbing. Her name started circulating. Her project started winning awards. And me? I was still down the hall, doing office admin for a design firm I didn't even respect. Because someone had to be the stable one. Someone had to be home in time for dinner. Pick up the slack. Make sure the laundry got folded. She once said one of us needed to be more grounded. Turns out, that someone was always going to be me. I knew exactly who Claire had listed on that family relocation form. And it wasn't me. But I didn't correct him. Because he got one thing right. The next chapter of my life was coming. And this time, it really would be mine. That night, my co-workers threw me a small farewell party. Afterward, slightly buzzed and warm from the drinks, I wandered down the hallway toward the exit, until I heard her voice. Claire's. The door to one of the private rooms was half open. She stood inside, drink in hand, her face lit unevenly by the flicker of the overhead lights. She looked complicated. A little flushed. A little lost. Do I regret not bringing Aaron? She was saying. No. Not really. She swirled her glass lazily, gaze unfocused. When I first applied for the transfer to headquarters, yeah, it was for him. He cut ties with his family for me. Gave up everything. I knew he had a hard time, and I thought, maybe going back to harbor together would make it easier. She paused. Her lips curled into a wry smile. But the moment Miles said something, I couldn't say no. There was a silence, weighted, deliberate. Then she gave a soft, bitter laugh, almost too low to hear. You only get one shot to go all in, right? If Miles still doesn't want me after this, then fine. I'll give up. I'll marry Aaron and settle down. My fingers had clenched into my palms without me realizing it. The skin was hot, and I could feel the sharp sting of nail against flesh. When Miles first came back, I genuinely thought I wouldn't lose. He was a fantasy. I was reality. I was the one who stood beside her through the rough years. Who stayed. Who showed up. But she'd never really woken up from that dream. And now I saw it. She never planned to. Still, what made her so sure I'd always be there waiting? Aaron? A voice cut through my thoughts. Miles. He stepped out of the hallway bathroom, expression tightening the moment he saw me. For once, the smugness was gone. Replaced by something more guarded. So, you heard all that? He didn't wait for an answer. Doesn't matter. The relocation papers are already filed. My name's locked in on the family list. I'm not letting this opportunity slip. And just like that, everything clicked. He'd never wanted her, not really. He wanted what she came with. The job. The connection. The leverage. That's why he kept her dangling, never quite close, never quite gone. That's why he reeled her in just enough, whenever she got too far. But still. There was one thing I couldn't make sense of. If you're just using her, I asked quietly, and you never actually cared, then why the games? Why all the videos, the texts, the taunting? Why go out of your way to prove she'd drop everything for you? He didn't answer right away. And maybe that silence said more than words ever could. He folded his arms, smirking faintly. What can I say? He said, voice casual, cold. Even if I don't want something, doesn't mean I want anyone else enjoying it too much. I almost laughed. How ironic. Claire wasn't just doing this to me. She was living the same story in reverse. Giving her heart away for years to someone who never saw her as more than a convenient possession. Just an object. Something to win, to shelf, to control. I turned to leave. But he stepped into my path. One more thing, he said, smiling again, this time with something mean behind his eyes. I don't want her leaving with guilt over how she treated you. Then. He clapped his hands together. Hard. A sharp crack. He gave a mock yelp of pain. Perfectly timed. Claire burst out of the room like someone had fired a gun. Without hesitation, she shoved me, hard, away from him. What the hell, Aaron? She snapped, eyes wild with fury. Miles stood behind her, hand over his untouched cheek like he'd just been slapped. Your ex seems a little upset about the transfer, he said, grinning behind feigned concern. My back slammed into the wall. I reached up, my hand came away with blood. A shallow cut. But what hurt more was the look on her face. Not confusion. Not worry. Just rage. Smack. Her mouth was opening, probably to accuse me. But I beat her to it. My hand came down across Miles's face, hard and deliberate. That one was me. Her eyes went wide. Shocked. Disbelieving. Aaron, what the hell is wrong with you? You're acting like a lunatic. I straightened. You said we're done. I accepted that. So who I leave with, who I don't, is none of your business anymore. And this time? I added, voice flat, don't bother trying to win me back. Let's see how long you last without someone to beg forgiveness from. She stared at me, furious and trembling. Then she turned her back. Threw one final glare over her shoulder. And led Miles back inside, slamming the door behind her with a deafening thud. And just like that. We were on opposite sides of the wall. Two lives that no longer intersected. So this is how it ends, I thought. Not with a quiet goodbye. But with blood. And shouting. And a locked door. Not with dignity, but a splintering crash. I turned away and walked down the hall, each step echoing in the emptiness. My head throbbed, pain pulsing behind my eyes. And somewhere deeper, beneath the bruises and cuts. My chest ached with something harder to name. Still. Even the worst wounds heal. Even this. Would pass. That night, I boarded a plane. Leaving behind the city I'd spent the last 3 years in. Going home. Really going home. I figured Claire wouldn't reach out. It wasn't her style. Pride like hers doesn't circle back. We would, I assumed, simply vanish from each other's lives. But a week later. She messaged me. So this time you're really being stubborn? Hiding out somewhere, upset and not saying a word? What are you doing? I didn't see it until late in the evening. When I did, I replied simply. Just got engaged. The response was instant. You're joking, right? I know how engagements work back in Harbor. No one just gets engaged out of nowhere. Unless it's one of those formal, arranged things. Is that it? This is just to mess with me, isn't it? Trying to make me nervous so I'll come chasing after you? If you're going to lie, at least make it believable. I stared at the screen. Line after line. A rush of messages, all in real time. From Claire. The same woman who used to leave me on read for hours, days. Who made me beg for scraps of attention. Now she was the one frantically responding. And I didn't want any of it. She wasn't wrong. There were times, when Miles had just returned, that I faked being sick just to pull her attention back. Stupid attempts. Pointless. Miles so much as sneezed, and she dropped everything. Me? I'd have to bleed out before she even blinked. And even then, she'd probably ask me not to make a scene. What I wanted was for her to worry about me the way she worried about him. But all it ever got me was humiliation. So I didn't reply. I let the screen fill with her questions and doubts. In the past, she would have lost her temper by now. Blocked me out of sheer annoyance. But instead, she called. Her name flashed across my phone. Once. Twice. I didn't hesitate. I declined the call. Then blocked her. For good. We really had broken up. I said the words. She confirmed them. That was all the closure I needed. And a proper ex should be dead to you. Because today, I really had gotten engaged. And there was no room left in my life for someone like her. Truth be told, Claire wasn't entirely wrong. Engagements weren't really a thing in Harbor City. But then again, the Cole family and the Chandler family didn't operate like most people. My family was old money, real estate, for generations. The Chandlers built their empire through manufacturing and industrial innovation. The Chandler Group, the very company Claire had just requested a transfer to, was one of their many holdings. And Isabel? Isabel Chandler wasn't just part of that family. She was its rising star. My fiancée. We'd known each other since we were kids, though we moved in different orbits. She was the kind of child the elite liked to point to at dinner parties. A prodigy. While I was still figuring out long division, she'd already been accepted into a prestigious early entrance program for gifted students. When I was pulling all-nighters studying for the SATs, she was already rotating through departments in her family's portfolio of companies. At 21, she joined a crumbling branch of the Chandler Corporation on the brink of collapse. In 3 years, she turned it around. Revived it. Then grew it. Now, their branches were spread across every major city in the country. She and I had very little overlap. Different lanes. Different lives. Sure, we were both success stories, in our own way. But beside her, everyone else just faded a little. So when our families brought up the idea of a match, I didn't take it seriously. A woman like Isabel didn't need to marry for alliance. Didn't need to answer to anyone. But to my surprise, she agreed. She said yes. The engagement party was understated, tasteful. Exactly as I'd asked for. I told her I didn't want a big scene. She simply nodded, understood. No drama. No speeches for social media. Just close family. Close friends. When she slipped the ring onto my finger, she met my eyes and said clearly, solemnly, "Aaron, my life has always been about work. But from this day forward, you are a permanent, indivisible part of it." No theatrics. No promises she couldn't keep. Just sincerity. And respect. In a room full of smiling relatives saying we looked perfect together. I called her my wife for the first time. She returned the gesture with a poised smile and a quiet vow. There was no overwhelming emotion. No rush of adrenaline. Just calm. And for the first time in years, security. She had always meant what she said. Even if we never found a grand, sweeping kind of love, I'd never have to worry about being an afterthought. Never again a placeholder. Never again someone's second best. I spent 7 years loving someone who never truly chose me. Now, I was engaged to someone who did. With clarity, intention, and no reservations. This was good for the families. Good for me. Good for her. No fireworks. But no landmines either. Everyone wins. That night, after a long day of ceremonies and congratulations. I collapsed into bed. Exhausted. But at peace. A video call lit up my screen. Mason. Dude, he said as soon as I picked up, Claire's been going nuts trying to find out where you are tonight. Wasn't she the one who agreed to the breakup? What, regretting it now? Mason had seen it all. We'd gone to the same college. He'd watched every chapter of me and Claire unfold. From our first late-night library study sessions to the slow unraveling years later. When I told him I was leaving town for Claire, he objected. So did my parents. Relationships need compromise, sure, he'd said, but why is it always you making the sacrifice? Harbor's a far better place for your career than her tiny hometown. Why not ask her to stay? I had asked. More than once. But no matter how I framed it, her answer never changed. My home is there. My friends are there. And finally, she offered. We can just do long distance. But I couldn't. I didn't want to. I was afraid of what distance would do to us. I wanted to see her every day. I was so sure then, so convinced I was making the right choice. I even told my family, we'll be happy. You'll see. The only thing I didn't do was tell Claire about my family's wealth. I wanted her to love me, not what came with me. Someday, I thought, I'd bring her home and proudly tell everyone I had chosen right. Back then, sacrificing everything for love had felt noble. Now it just felt naive. We're really done, I told Mason. I blocked her. Whether Claire regretted it or not didn't matter anymore. She'd never feared losing me, until now. Her panic wasn't love. It was the shock of losing control. Probably for the best, Mason said. But get this, I heard she's transferring to Chandler Group headquarters. And she's bringing someone listed as family? What kind of weird flex is that? Also, doesn't that mean you two could run into each other? I didn't flinch. Unlikely. She's heading to Design Division 2. I'll be in one. I studied design. And Chandler Group was one of the top firms in the country. When my family suggested I work there, partly to be closer to Isabel, and partly because the role aligned with my background, I agreed. But I turned down the offer to start as a deputy director. After graduation, I'd spent years behind a front desk. My resume lacked the weight it should have had. So I chose to start from scratch. I didn't want a title that came from my last name. I wanted to earn my position. The way Isabel had. She started at the bottom too. Proved herself. If we were going to build a life together, I wanted us to be equals. Not a rescue. Not a favor. Not another imbalance. And Chandler Group was massive, tens of thousands of employees. Design Division 1 and 2 weren't even in the same building. The odds of bumping into Claire were minimal. But even if we did cross paths? So what? She had Miles now. And secrets of her own. I had nothing to hide. And nothing left to give her. If fate ever made us walk past each other again, I'd keep walking. That chapter was closed. The next day, I officially started my new job. The pace at Chandler Group was fast, relentless even. I didn't have the same resume others did, so I made up for it with time. Long hours. Fewer breaks. Quiet diligence. Isabel didn't interfere. She was a workaholic too. Our rhythms never clashed. We operated like two quiet systems in parallel. Sometimes, when I stayed late, her assistant would show up with dinner. On weekends, we made polite appearances, dinners with her family, mine. Smiling for the parents. Saying the right things. For two people with no emotional history, the distance between us felt just right. Safe. Predictable. I rarely thought about Claire anymore. If anything, I occasionally wondered about Miles. After all his theatrics, his desperate push to get into Chandler, he'd vanished. It always struck me as strange. Chandler was hard to get into, sure. But Miles had an elite degree. His resume should have opened doors. And yet, he didn't make the cut. Not on his own. In the end, he had to sneak in, as Claire's family. Half a month passed. No drama from Design Division 2. And I had better things to focus on. But fate has a funny sense of timing. That day, our team had to deliver a concept package to marketing. Marketing shared a building with Design 2 and the executive floor. I figured I'd drop it off myself. I was already planning to meet Isabel afterward for dinner at the Chandler family estate. Efficient. Uncomplicated. But as I stood waiting for the elevator, documents in hand, I heard it. Aaron. Across the crowd of employees, her voice cut through like a blade. There she was. Claire. She said my name like it burned her mouth, jaw tight, eyes flashing. I turned, reflex, not intent, and paused. She still looked beautiful. She always had. But something was different. The sharp polish was dulled. Her eyes were rimmed with dark circles. Her skin looked sallow, exhausted. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Before I could process more, she grabbed my wrist. Dragged me, through a blur of startled stares. Into the stairwell. And then. She cornered me. Literally. Back against the wall, her breath fast, chest rising and falling dangerously close to mine. Her eyes locked onto me, wild and unreadable, part fury, part something else. I didn't flinch, but I didn't move closer either. I lifted the folder in my hands, calmly wedging it between us. A barrier. A line. The space where her chaos would not cross. Her eyes dropped to the folder in my hand, reading the title on the cover. So, she said, voice softer, less combative, you're working at Chandler too? Something in her expression loosened. The tension around her mouth slackened. A faint smile touched her lips. That's funny, she added, almost playful now. What? I asked, not following. Don't play dumb. She gave me a light push. Too familiar. Too casual. You break up with me. Block me. Pretend I don't exist. And then you quietly follow me back to harbor? You have no idea how panicked I've been. She gave a short, breathy laugh. When I found out you quit your job, I looked for you everywhere. Then that night you texted me you were engaged. God, I almost believed it. Another laugh. Bitter, incredulous. Can't believe I fell for that. So dramatic. I stared at her. At the certainty on her face. The arrogance, the assumption that I was still orbiting around her. Yes, I had loved her. Once. But the Aaron who used to chase her shadow? She killed him with her own hands. Let go, I said quietly. She didn't move. Instead, she smiled. Not unless you give me a kiss. My eyes hardened. I wrenched her hand off mine. She winced, cradling her wrist, eyes wide with disbelief. Aaron. I've done everything to win you back. You're seriously still acting like this? Her voice cracked with frustration. Yes, I let Miles take that job offer. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd overreact. I just needed time, for things to settle before I explained everything. And anyway, you're from here. It's easy for you to come back. Look, you did get into Chandler on your own, didn't you? So why are you still being petty? The pressure at HQ is insane. I can't keep carrying all this guilt. You're exhausting me. That was new. A full speech. An actual explanation. But it didn't move me. Not anymore. I looked at her, calmly, without a flicker of sympathy. Let me guess, Miles didn't bite, and now I'm plan B? Her breath caught. So, you heard that night? She tried to say more, but footsteps echoed down the hall. Sharp. Fast. Miles. His expression tightened when he saw us, first surprise, then something sharper. Aaron? His tone held mock disbelief. What are you doing here? I thought you two were over. What's this, lingering sparks? A little secret stairwell reunion? Claire froze. Instantly stiff. Visibly anxious. And in that moment, I understood. She hadn't let him go. Not even close. So how did she have the nerve to corner me, laugh in my face, demand I come back? Mason was right after all. The collision? It was inevitable. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. I already knew what Claire would choose. She always chose him. Over and over again. Every time there was a choice between me and Miles. She picked him. But something was different this time. Maybe something happened in the last 2 weeks. Because when Miles spoke, there was an edge in his voice. A flicker of accusation. Like he was the one betrayed. Like he'd been the one committed all along. As if he hadn't spent years stringing Claire along. Enjoying her attention without ever truly giving anything back. Suddenly, he wore the role of the wounded party. The one who deserved loyalty. And maybe, just maybe, Claire would have gone to him. As she always did. But this time, she didn't move. She stood there. Still. Silent. No immediate apology. No desperate placation. And that threw Miles off. I watched something shift behind his eyes. The polished confidence cracked, ever so slightly. Wow, he muttered coldly. Here I was, still debating whether or not to give you a chance. Turns out, you were never serious. Well then. Congrats to you both. He turned on his heel. His footsteps echoed down the hall, sharp, angry, heavy. Not so much retreating as storming off. A noise that sounded a lot like indignation wrapped in rejection. Claire finally blinked, like snapping out of a trance. She hesitated, then turned to me. Aaron, she said softly, I'll explain everything later. She took a step away, then paused, looked back. That breakup? It was just a fight. I never agreed to it. You're still my boyfriend. I opened my mouth. She was already walking away. Running after Miles. I stood there for a moment, holding the folder to my chest. Silent. Flat. Of all people. Miles was the one to accuse us of not cutting ties. And the irony? He wasn't wrong. There was someone playing at unfinished business. Only it wasn't me. It was Claire. Trying to pull strings from both sides. Still convinced everything revolved around her. It would have been laughable if it weren't so exhausting. But none of it mattered anymore. Let her chase whoever she wanted. I wasn't going back. Not for love. Not for guilt. Not for some half-hearted, you're still mine. I pushed open the stairwell door and headed for the marketing department. Inside, a junior strategist looked up as I approached. She glanced at the folder, hesitated. Oh, you're the new guy from Design 1. Maybe I should loop in someone else to walk us through it. No need, I said. I'd worked on this project from the ground up. There was nothing I didn't know. Calmly, I flipped open the folder and pointed out the key revisions. This section here, those color variations were intentional. We're testing emotional response across market segments. As for the layout shift, it aligns with the updated campaign assets. As I finished explaining the proposal, a voice cut in from behind me. New hire from Design One? Andrew, the marketing director. He'd caught the tail end of my walkthrough and now stood watching, arms crossed, curious but not unkind. Solid, he said with a nod. Glad to see Design One still bringing in people who can think on their feet. The marketing associate who'd first hesitated looked sheepish. Sorry, my bad. I jumped to conclusions. It's just, we've had some issues with the new guy from Design 2. Miles. She lowered her voice slightly. Honestly? Half the time he doesn't know what's going on. We ask questions, he stalls. And everything's always still being finalized. Another team member chimed in with a shrug. I mean, yeah, he came in under some kind of internal referral, total fast track. But you'd think someone from a top university would at least perform. Someone else muttered under their breath. Maybe that degree was bought. My expression didn't change. But something clicked. It had never made sense. Why Miles, with all his credentials, hadn't made it through the regular hiring pipeline. Why he'd gone the roundabout way. Leveraging Claire's family tie, letting her petition on his behalf. Why his tone earlier had shifted. Why his superiority had started to crack. Maybe things weren't going as smoothly as he'd planned. To Claire, Miles had always been the untouchable one. Charming. Brilliant. Effortless. A star. But spend enough time working with someone, and the shine wears off. True ability doesn't hide forever. Neither does its absence. I wondered. How much of that golden illusion was still intact for Claire? Probably most of it. Otherwise, she wouldn't have chased after him like that. Still, it had nothing to do with me. Their drama, their past, their push and pull, none of it concerned me anymore. I left the marketing department and headed down the hallway toward the executive floor. I was planning to meet Isabel in her office. She always stayed a bit late, and we had dinner plans at the estate. But before I could reach the elevators, someone stepped in front of me. Blocking the path. We need to talk. I blinked. Miles. I looked at Miles in silence. The same Miles who had, over the past 6 months, cost me more sleepless nights than I cared to count. The same Miles I'd once tried to reason with. Back then, I'd approached him without hostility. Laid everything bare. I told him. If you love Claire, if you truly want her, I'll step aside. Because I believed then that love couldn't be forced. That happiness didn't come from winning, it came from being chosen. But Miles had only looked at me with that same expression he always wore. Half amused, half pitying. As if, in the three-person mess of our relationship, he'd already declared himself the prize. He stood taller, smugger. Always just out of reach. While I stumbled behind, aching. When I made my offer, when I tried to step away gracefully. He smiled, slow and superior. No wonder Claire says being with you is exhausting, he said. She and I are just friends. Simple. Pure. It's you who can't handle it. You can't lock someone away just because you love them. She has a life, a career, friends. You need to chill. It was so transparent. So falsely virtuous. And yet, I could do nothing. Because I loved her. And if he didn't want her, then maybe, just maybe. If I loved her well enough, she'd realize I was the one worth staying for. But all of that was over. Long over. Now, standing in front of me again. Miles tried to put on the same old face. The one that said I'm in control. But something was off. There were shadows beneath his eyes. A frayed edge in his tone. He was unraveling, and he knew it. I underestimated you, he said, eyes sharp, voice cold. Thought you were just a straightforward, soft-hearted type. Didn't realize you knew how to play the game. You pulled the oldest move in the book, back off, act indifferent. Now look. Claire's all worked up about you again. That must feel good, huh? I felt my jaw tighten. God. Do these people just never listen? I've said this before, I replied, low and tired. Claire and I are done. Over. I've made that clear, again and again. He laughed. A bitter, disbelieving sound. Save that line for her. Don't waste it on me. I know all about you. 7 years, Aaron. 7. You think some other woman's gonna sign up for that kind of history? You think you're ever going to have that kind of love again? I stared at him. Speechless for a moment. Not because I didn't have words. But because there were no words. For how wrong he still was. No words. For how thoroughly I had moved on. While he kept grasping for control. In a world that was finally slipping away from him. Miles looked smug. Like he'd just delivered some devastating truth. Like he believed he'd struck a nerve. Just like you can't let go of Claire, he said, voice climbing in confidence. She can't let go of me either. She acts like she cares about you now, but that's only because you pulled some clever tricks. But you saw it, didn't you? I snapped my fingers, and she came right back. I stood still. Watching. Letting him talk. Because I'd finally realized something. Talking to Miles was like trying to argue with a mirror that only reflects itself. Whatever you said, he only saw what he wanted to see. So what's your point? I asked. He straightened, chin high. My point, he said, is that I've changed my mind. Now that we're working at the same company, I can see it, Claire's become quite impressive. From now on, I don't want you interfering with her. If I manage to marry the CEO, fine, I'll give Claire back to you. No harm done. But if that doesn't work out, well, Claire's not a bad fallback. So until I figure things out, stop contacting her. And cut the manipulative crap. Or I will make things difficult for you. Got it? He delivered the whole speech with the air of a man expecting applause. Like he thought he'd just laid down law. I blinked, caught somewhere between amusement and disbelief. Wait. Did he just say? The CEO's husband? That's when it clicked. All this time, his obsession with getting into Chandler Group. His sudden shift in attitude. His half-baked warnings and territorial behavior. It wasn't about Claire. It had never been about Claire. He was after Isabel. My fiancée. I stared at him. Not angrily. Not even defensively. Just, amazed. He was standing here. Warned me not to speak to my ex. While openly declaring his intent to pursue my current fiancée. The sheer audacity of it nearly made me laugh. Do you even know Isabel? I asked, voice calm, curious. Or maybe, does she know you? He didn't answer right away. Of course not. Because I knew Isabel. She was a workaholic to the bone. Had never entertained flings, rumors, or anyone's attention. Her dating history was practically non-existent. When she first heard I'd supposedly fallen for someone else. She shrugged and said it was fine. Gave her more time to focus on work. A woman like Isabel didn't get approached. She got revered. Men lined up to chase her. But she walked through them untouched, unmoved. Like a myth in a world too ordinary. Her parents, Victor and Marion, used to whisper worries behind closed doors. Tried gently, awkwardly, to ask if maybe she just wasn't interested in men. No answer ever came. Only silence. Until she agreed to the engagement. And when she did, she gave it her full attention. Planned every detail with my comfort in mind. Kept her schedule open for dinners, joint meetings, the occasional weekend brunch. Never pushed. Never demanded. Just showed up. Isabel wasn't warm in the way Claire had been. But she was present. Deliberate. The day we got engaged, her parents looked at me like I was a divine miracle. Like I'd done what no one else could. Gotten their daughter to care. Now here was Miles. Assuming Isabel was just another promotion to win. Another woman to take a shot at. The urge to laugh was strong. And yet, I said nothing. Because that wasn't the game I wanted to play. I had joined Chandler Group quietly. Without fanfare. No press release, no family leverage. I wanted to rise on my own merit. Not as Isabel's fiancé. Because the minute that identity went public, everything would change. Every compliment would be laced with implication. Every accomplishment undermined by suspicion. I wasn't here for that. So I looked at Miles. Smug, ambitious, already plotting his next move. And I said nothing. Miles looked me over, chin lifted. Of course I've met her. Back in college, Isabel Chandler gave a guest lecture, alumni visit. She's actually an honorary graduate from my university, so technically, I'm her junior. He said it like it was some kind of badge. A personal connection forged in a crowded lecture hall. I've watched all her interviews, he added, practically glowing with confidence. She once mentioned her type. Said she liked guys with long lashes. That's when I knew. I had to get into Chandler. Had to get close. Give her a chance to notice me. Fall for me. He was animated. Lit up. Believing every word he said. And for the first time, I saw it. Not just the arrogance. The delusion. The desperate hope. Miles, for all his bravado, was no different than I once was. So sure that love could be earned by trying harder. By fitting some imaginary mold. By wanting it enough. It hit me all at once. That kind of foolishness wasn't exclusive to me. Even he, Miles, the smug, silver-tongued man I used to resent, was just another fool in love. So caught up in the dream, he didn't realize how ridiculous he sounded. I couldn't help it. I laughed. His eyes narrowed immediately. Suspicious. Defensive. What's so funny? Then, like flipping a switch, his tone turned sharp. Don't get ideas. Just because you happen to kind of look like me. And yeah, fine, your lashes are decent. Don't think you have a shot with Miss Chandler. He spat the next words like venom. A guy like you? You'd only taint her. She wouldn't even look at someone like you. Funny. When I first met Miles, I didn't think we looked alike. Not at all. Then one day I saw an old photo of him. Back when he was younger. Softer. Long lashes, eyes clear. Back when he still believed in something, maybe. Now? Those eyes were sharp. Calculated. Hollow. No. We weren't alike. Not anymore. Maybe we never were. Do yourself a favor, I said as I turned to leave. And look in a mirror sometime. I didn't wait for a reply. When I reached Isabel's office, she was still in a meeting. But the moment she saw me through the glass, she paused the call, mid-discussion, and waved her team into a short recess. Then, without a word, she stepped into the kitchenette. By the time I set down my folder, she was walking out with a tray. A fresh cup of coffee. 2 pastries. Everything I liked, down to the roast and the filling. All dated today. She didn't ask what I wanted. She already knew. I visited her office maybe once every week, if that. But she always had what I liked. Quietly prepared. Carefully stored. Maybe that was her way of caring. Measured. Intentional. No drama. Just consistency. I remembered what Miles said. About Isabel's type. Long lashes. I caught my reflection in the window glass. And for a second, I wondered. Did she like me? Then I brushed the thought away. Isabel had known me since we were kids. If she liked me, she'd had 1,000 chances to say so. She never did. That comment about eyelashes? Probably just a throwaway line from an old interview. Dragged up by men desperate to mean something. When her meeting ended, we left the building together. She led me through the private corridor, her usual route to the parking garage. No fanfare. No forced conversation. Just the two of us. Moving through the quiet space. The car pulled smoothly out of the underground garage. Until the brakes slammed. Hard. The sudden jolt threw us slightly forward in our seats. Outside, in the cone of headlights, stood Miles. Bent over, clutching his knee, face twisted in what looked like pain. He looked up, expecting something. But when his eyes landed on me, sitting beside Isabel in the back seat, every word he'd prepared evaporated. What came out instead was a high, involuntary pitch of disbelief. "Aaron? What are you doing in Chandler's car?" His glare was sharp, indignant, like I'd stolen something from him. But I didn't answer. Why would I? He had no right to ask. And Isabel? She didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't even glance at him. Only the driver got out, walking around the front of the car with professional calm. "Are you an employee at Chandler Group?" he asked coolly. "This garage is restricted. Executive access only." It took a beat for Miles to catch up. He blinked again. And then seemed to remember why he was here at all. His anger slipped into awkwardness. "Oh, right. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. I'm new here. Still getting my bearings. I must have taken a wrong turn." I was deep in thought, going over some design concepts, just kind of zoned out, I guess. As he spoke, he kept blinking. Too much. Too rehearsed. Almost like he'd practiced this in front of a mirror. More than once. I watched him, expressionless. And somehow, what struck me wasn't his arrogance. It was his effort. So much effort. To impress. To be noticed. To seem charming. All those carefully chosen words. The too calculated pauses. He was trying, too hard, to create a moment. A collision, a twist of fate. But Isabel didn't even look at him. Not once. And in that moment, I remembered the way he used to control Claire. The casual shrug that made her chase him. The half-smile that made her apologize first. Back then, he'd seemed effortless. A man who didn't have to try. But now? Now he looked like a man sweating through his best performance. Desperate. Like a clown in a borrowed suit, stumbling through the wrong script. And maybe that was how I used to look, too. All those times I lost control. The begging. The shouting. The pleading. In Claire's eyes, I must have seemed just as ridiculous. It's true what they say. When you're in it, you don't see the mess you've become. But now? Now I could see it all so clearly. I turned, just slightly, and met Isabel's eyes. She hadn't moved. Just sat there, calm, perfectly composed. And I felt it. That solid, silent gratitude. Thank God I'd left that version of myself behind. Miles was still talking. Still performing. His gaze kept darting toward Isabel. Searching for a reaction. A flicker. Anything. He got nothing. It was the driver who broke the silence. Polite. Firm. Then please leave. Now. A clean dismissal. No room for misinterpretation. Miles froze. The stiffness in his face gave him away. This wasn't how he pictured it. Not the grand romantic, accidental encounter he imagined. Not the electric connection. Not the beginning of something cinematic. Just cold silence. From the one person he came here for. Of course he couldn't let it go. Not Miles. Just as the car started to ease forward again, he jogged around to my side. Leaning down, he peered through the half-lowered window, eyes locking with mine. "Aaron," he said, feigning surprise. "I called out and you didn't even respond, thought I was seeing things. But nope. It's really you. What are you doing in Chandler's car? Does Claire know about this? I mean, after 7 years together. You'd think she deserves to be told, don't you?" His voice was coated with politeness. But his eyes. They were pure venom. Burning with something that looked a lot like hate. Hate carefully folded into fake civility. He turned toward Isabel next, adding quickly. "I'm really sorry, Miss Chandler. I tend to speak my mind, sometimes too quickly. Didn't mean to intrude on your evening." He smiled. Blinked slowly. Long lashes. Practiced charm. But his feet didn't move. Not an inch. It wasn't until the driver gave a quiet cough. And Isabel didn't so much as lift an eyebrow. That Miles finally took the hint. He turned. Walked off. But not without a flicker of defeat in his shoulders. Something in the way he looked back. Like he couldn't believe this version of the story wasn't going his way. The moment the taillights disappeared from view, Isabel turned toward me, voice calm. "Do you want him handled?" She mimed a cutting motion across her throat. I sat bolt upright. I thought the Chandler family didn't deal in gray areas. I'd signed up for an arranged engagement. A quiet, dignified alliance. Not to marry into a dynasty with mafia undertones. She blinked at me, startled. Then, for the first time in a while, her cool, ever-steady gaze broke into a genuine laugh. Not a smirk. Not polite amusement. A real, bright laugh. One that even touched her eyes. "What are you thinking?" she said, and gently tapped my arm. I meant fired. "I haven't looked into your past. I don't know what history you have with him. But clearly, he's trouble. If he ever disrupts your peace again, he's gone." I froze. Not at her words. But at the gesture. That soft tap. So casual. So familiar. Almost affectionate. It reminded me, distantly, of something else. Of Claire, years ago, in a different life. When she used to tap me on the arm and grin before playfully begging for something. She had that same warm, disarming touch. Back when everything felt simple. Before the arguments. Before the heartbreak. Funny, isn't it? How those tiny moments. The ones you thought were unforgettable. Fade, quietly, without your permission. Even love, once bright enough to blind you. Eventually becomes, just memory. I glanced up. Isabel was still looking at me, patiently waiting for an answer. She had no idea what just ran through my mind. And I didn't want her to. So I smiled. "Wouldn't it be a little unethical," I asked, "to fire an employee just because he's connected to me?" "Unethical?" Isabel arched an eyebrow, her tone cool but firm. Regardless of your connection, she said, he should be dismissed. Her voice sharpened, not in anger, but precision. The path to the executive garage is clearly marked. If he couldn't notice even that, that's not just a lapse in judgment. It's a competency issue. She glanced at her phone, then added, without missing a beat. 3 minutes ago, I had my assistant look him up. Miles joined as a referral, listed as a family member of Claire, our design director. He has a master's degree, so HR placed him in a staff designer role. But based on his performance so far, he doesn't meet even the basic expectations for the job. She swiped the screen again. If we find any inconsistencies in his resume, he'll be referred for falsification review, which could escalate to fraud. Her tone wasn't cold. It was simply precise, methodical. It was the same Isabel I saw at board meetings. Calm, composed, unsentimental. And yet, I found myself feeling something I hadn't expected. Disappointment. Not at the decision, she was right, of course. But at the fact that it wasn't personal. She wasn't protecting me. She was simply following the rules. I nodded. Understood. Let's proceed as protocol allows. The car slipped out of the city and toward the Chandler estate. I thought maybe she'd bring it up then. Claire. After all, Miles had gone out of his way to make our history sound scandalous. 7 years together. Not exactly a casual fling. I had nothing to hide. I'd loved honestly, even if it hadn't lasted. But I also knew how the world judged people, especially men with baggage. And Isabel. She was flawless. Flawless in a way that made you feel both comforted and exposed. No scandals. No romantic history. Her past was cleaner than a new ledger. So, yes. I pretended not to care. But part of me still wondered. Did she? Only, she never asked. Not once. Instead, she talked about work. Asked what I thought about the branding initiative. Suggested 2 tweaks to my pitch strategy that, in hindsight, solved the very thing I'd been stuck on for weeks. She made it look effortless. And the longer we talked, the more I forgot about the ghost in the rearview mirror. Miles. Claire. Everything. They didn't feel so loud anymore. I glanced over at her. Elegant. Steady. A softness in her voice now that hadn't been there in the office. And suddenly, I wondered. Did she really not care? Was she simply being polite? Or had she already considered it, measured it, and decided it didn't matter? Victor and Marion greeted me with their usual warmth and graciousness, as if nothing had changed. Dinner was pleasant, even comfortable. Until Isabel's assistant arrived with a folder in hand. She took it without haste, flipping it open casually before speaking. Her tone calm, almost conversational. I've decided to transfer all of my shares in Chandler Group to Aaron. Do either of you object? I turned to her, startled. Chandler Group was at its peak. A market giant valued in the billions. She held 60% of the company, making her the controlling shareholder. Conservatively, that stake was worth at least $3 billion. More than the money, though, was what the company meant to her. She'd built it from the ground up. She'd once said in an interview that Chandler Group wasn't just her career, it was her child. And now, just like that, she was handing it to me? But Victor and Marion didn't blink. Why not add mine too? Marion offered brightly. Victor chuckled. Then I suppose I'll follow my wife's lead. Isabel signed the papers without so much as a pause. Suit yourselves. Then she turned to me, gently placing the folder in my hands. Come walk with me. The garden was still thick with the scent of late summer roses. Their perfume drifted through the air, carried by a soft breeze that rustled the trees and cooled the night. Her voice came with it, low and steady. "Aaron, ever since that man showed up, I could sense something shifted in you. Everyone has a past. It's not always pretty. But those experiences made us who we are today." She paused, eyes steady on mine. "Whatever hurt came before. I just want you to know. You won't have to face it again. We're building something together now. And the future matters more than anything else. I want you to feel secure with me." She gave me a small smile. "I'll work hard every day, just to be worthy of you." I let out a laugh, soft, unguarded. But my throat was tight. She saw it. "So," I asked carefully, "you really don't mind? That I was in a relationship for 7 years?" She blinked. Then her face grew serious. "One relationship? Of course I don't mind." She tilted her head. "Honestly, I've had more than a few myself." That caught me off guard. I'd always heard she'd been too focused on work to date. Were they all secret relationships? She gave a solemn shake of her head, then broke into mock gravity. "Back when I was younger and more combative. Let's just say I made quite a few enemies in the business world. Some of them, I'm pretty sure, are still obsessing over me to this day." Then, with a perfectly timed pause, in a teeth-grinding, furious kind of way, I laughed out loud. Not because it was particularly funny, but because it was her. This version of her. The one no one else got to see. The one she only showed to me. That spark of humor, the deliberate attempt to lift my mood. That was her way of saying, "You matter to me. You're not alone anymore." And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't dared name. Belonging. Maybe even love. The moonlight fell softly over us, gentle as silk. Whatever weight had been pressing on me these past few days, it seemed to lift, little by little, until all that remained was a lightness I hadn't felt in years. Isabel looked at me. And slowly, her ears flushed with the faintest blush. "Aaron," she asked, her voice quieter than usual, "can I kiss you?" We were standing close. Her scent, clean and floral, with just a trace of something warmer, drifted between us. Intoxicating, but not overwhelming. I didn't feel the urge to step back. In fact, my heart leaned forward before I did. So I smiled. And closed my eyes. The kiss that followed was feather-light. A soft brush, almost weightless. Like a petal fluttering down onto a string long left untouched. And suddenly, that string hummed to life again. She wrapped her arms around my waist and rested gently against my chest. I could feel the rhythm of her heart, steady, but quickened. "When you're ready," she whispered, "can we get married?" There was no pressure in her voice. Only hope. Only the quiet offer of something lasting. And somehow, without hesitation, I answered. Yes. They say real love makes you a better version of yourself. After last night, I believed it. The morning air felt sharper, cleaner. I felt good. Whole. For the first time in a long while, I was excited to greet the day. As usual, I met up with Mason for our morning run. We'd grown up next door, our family homes practically sharing a yard. When I left Harbor years ago, he'd tried everything to convince me to stay. We nearly stopped speaking over it. So I was especially glad that somehow, we'd found our way back to each other. As we ran side by side, I caught Mason sneaking glances at me. What? I finally asked, running a hand over my face. Did I forget to wash up or something? He shook his head, grinning. Nah. You just look different today. Like you got hit with a reset button or something. Then he leaned in closer, lowering his voice like he was about to share a state secret. You two didn't, you know. I gave a sheepish half-smile, my cheeks warming. We kissed. He reeled back dramatically, slapping both hands over his face. That's it? Just one kiss and you're glowing like a rom-com poster? I laughed, trying, and failing, to hide the smile creeping up my face. Man, Isabel really is something. She's been a genius since middle school, and now she's out here breaking hearts and healing them. We kept running, teasing each other like we always did. But part of my mind drifted, back to that first day I returned to harbor. When Mason showed up at my doorstep, barely waiting for the door to open. And when he saw me, his eyes had gone red around the edges. Aaron, he'd started to say. Then stopped. You've lost so much weight. That wasn't what he meant. We both knew it. He meant I looked, hollowed out. Drained. Back then, I'd been consumed by the fear of losing something, someone, again. I had forgotten what it meant to take care of myself. To love myself. I was a dried-up stem in the middle of winter. But now I understood what people meant when they said, loving someone is like tending a garden. And today, finally, I was starting to bloom again. After our run, I took a quick shower and grabbed breakfast. As usual, I got to the office early, first one in, just how I liked it. There was still so much to learn, and I intended to prove I deserved to be here. But this morning, someone beat me to it. Aaron. Claire stood at the entrance of my office, eyes blazing. I told you I'd come explain everything. How could you go behind my back like that? I already had a good guess why she was here. Still, I looked at her calmly. What exactly do you think I did? Miles was fired last night. He said it was because of you. I had no interest in entertaining this. HR would have explained the grounds for his termination in detail. If you or he have concerns, take it up with them. Now if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. But she didn't move. Instead, she stared at me for a long beat, then, almost as if bargaining, she said, I'll marry you. I'll go to the design department, request your transfer to my division. I'll get Miles reassigned to another team. After we're married, I'll cut all ties with him. That's what you wanted, right? Is this good enough? My patience finally snapped. Claire. What do I have to say for you to understand? We broke up. I'm not marrying you. And as for Miles, he got himself fired. Claire stared at me, stunned. Like she hadn't even considered the possibility that I might say no. But I said I'd marry you. Her voice wavered. She reached toward me, as if to touch my forehead. Are you in shock or something? Aaron, I said we can get married. I slapped her hand away. I already told you how I feel. I won't say it again. If you don't leave, I'll call security. I turned and moved toward the emergency call button near the wall. That's when Miles appeared. Darting out from around the corner and blocking the button with his arm. Sunlight slashed across his face. His eyes were wide, bloodshot. He hadn't slept. And in that moment, something about him, the way he stared at me, like a cornered animal, was terrifying. Aaron, didn't you always like Claire? Miles' voice was edged with obsession. I already gave you a chance. I told her to marry you. How long are you gonna keep playing dumb? Just say yes already. His tone was desperate, warped with delusion. Marry her now. And tell the company not to fire me. Or I'll expose all your dirty secrets. He stepped toward me, reaching out as if to grab me. Say yes to Claire. Just as I was about to sidestep, Claire moved between us. What dirty secrets? I couldn't see her face, but her back was stiff. Her voice tight, trembling with tension. Miles didn't answer. He just kept staring at me, rage burning in his eyes. This is your last chance. Say yes to her. Stop trying to steal from me. I didn't flinch. Didn't blink. I calmly pressed the security alarm. Claire snapped. What dirty secrets? She turned on him, grabbing his wrist. You're hurting me. But the Claire who once tiptoed around his feelings wasn't here anymore. She didn't let go. She just repeated, over and over. What did Aaron do? They scuffled, messy and loud. And I just stood there. Silent, unmoved. The flicker of hope in Miles' eyes finally died. He understood now. I really didn't want Claire anymore. But then. His expression shifted from disbelief to sheer madness. Claire. He shouted. You know why Aaron doesn't want you? Because he's Isabel's boy toy. His voice cracked, dripping with resentment. I never should have told you about Isabel's type, long lashes, right? You figured it out yesterday and went to the garage just to seduce her, didn't you? I should have gone earlier. I spent days preparing, planning, making sure everything would go perfectly. If I'd just shown up a little sooner, I'd have been the one sitting next to her. But no, she's that undiscerning. Even you are good enough for her. Why? Why did she fire me after everything I told her about your past? Why would she still pick you over me? I did everything, tried so hard to get close to her. Why does it have to end like this? It was the first time I'd ever seen Miles so completely unhinged. Far worse than I'd ever been at my lowest. Claire slowly let go of him. When she turned to me, her eyes were bloodshot. Is it true? I don't believe it. She reached for my hand. Come with me. I stepped back, out of her grasp. Just as security arrived. Seeing it was Claire, they remained polite. Ms. Vance, if you have something to say, please stay calm. No need for physical contact. Claire didn't even glance at them. Her eyes locked on mine. Aaron, why aren't you answering me? So it's true? Her voice cracked. How dare you? You got into Chandler Group because of her, didn't you? You were already with Isabel, that's why you dumped me? After all these years, you could just walk away, like we were nothing? But her rage began to shift. Into sorrow. A tremble in her voice. We were together for so long. How could you just let it go? People had started arriving for work. They slowed at the sight of the three of us, tense, explosive. Eyes wide, whispers beginning to ripple through the crowd. Miles, who'd gone quiet for a moment, suddenly screamed. You want to know what's going on? We caught a cheater. That's right, Aaron from Design Team 1, he's been sleeping his way up. Claire rushed to shut him up, slapping a hand over his mouth. Her voice dropped low, urgent. Stop it. This is between me and Aaron. You're going to ruin him like this. But Miles bit down, hard. Her palm bled. He shoved her aside with everything he had. You're damn right I'm ruining him. Because he ruined me first. Then he bolted into the growing crowd. Claire couldn't stop him. Aaron from Design Team 1, he shouted. A two-faced snake who sleeps with the boss. He got me fired to cover up his mess. You think I'm the problem? He's the one who should be fired. Come on, everyone, speak up. What kind of man does this? No shame at all. I never imagined a person's face could twist with such venom. His shameless lies, his manipulative theatrics. They disgusted me. But to Miles's shock, almost no one believed him. I know Aaron, someone said. Andrew even praised him, said he's a really promising newcomer. What, do you think Design Team 1 is full of idiots? Aaron may be new, but he's a fast learner. He's always the first to arrive, always willing to help on projects even if his name's not on them. Who are you trying to insult? Aren't you that guy from Design Team 2, Miles? The one who's only been here, 3 weeks? Already caused a mess more than once. Honestly, the fact that you lasted this long is the real scandal. You getting fired? About time. Exactly. What era do you think we're in? Spreading rumors like this, get real. Miles stood frozen. He hadn't expected the crowd to turn on him. He scrambled to explain, voice rising, words tripping over themselves. But it was no use. Then suddenly, his eyes lit up. He pointed to the stairs. Look! There, Chandler. Chandler is the one keeping Aaron. Footsteps echoed steadily. At the end of the hallway, Isabel Chandler appeared, perfectly composed in a sharp-tailored suit. She walked forward with calm, decisive grace. Until she was standing right beside me. The familiar scent of her perfume, subtle, grounding, settled over me like a balm. And in her gaze, I saw something unspoken. A question. A reassurance. And strangely, a quiet understanding passed between us. I nodded. She looked toward the crowd. And spoke. Yes. I am with Aaron. Her voice was even, quiet. But it carried the weight of absolute authority. You could have heard a pin drop. Then the silence cracked. And the crowd erupted. Miles yelled the loudest. See? See? I told you. Aaron's nothing but a kept man. But this time, his voice was drowned out. Wait, did she say they're together? She's never even been married. How is he a kept man? Sounds like a boyfriend to me. Honestly, they look kinda good together. Anyone else notice how gentle she sounded just now? Chandler's usually all business. But that tone, that was soft. Damn, lucky bastard. Miles stood there, stunned, his voice rising into a near scream. Even if it's not a sugar baby thing, it's still being kept. You think someone like her, an heiress to the Chandler fortune, would fall for a nobody? His voice cracked with rage. Then Isabel took the folder her assistant handed over. And without a word, hurled it straight at him. Smack. It hit his face hard. A thin line of blood split the corner of his mouth. He gasped at the pain, completely silenced. Then Isabel turned to the crowd, pulling me gently into her side. Her voice was calm. Icy. Unshakable. If anyone here insists on talking about who's keeping whom, then let's get it straight. I'm the one being kept. She smiled, tilting her head toward me. Aaron is the chairman of Chandler Group. I'm just someone who works for him. Her eyes softened as she looked up at me. Isn't that right, my fiancé? Before I could answer, the sound of shoes on tile filled the hall. A whole entourage approaching. Victor, Marion, and their lawyers strode forward with gravitas. Victor smirked. We came here today to finalize the share transfer for Aaron, but looks like we walked into quite a show. Marion's presence lit up the space. Commanding and cool as ever. She swept a sharp gaze across the room. The Chandler and Cole families agreed to this engagement years ago. Aaron marrying Isabel is a blessing to our family. She turned icy. If anyone here dares to gossip again, they'll be out the door. On the spot. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Wait, Aaron is the heir to the Cole family? The real estate moguls? No wonder Chandler's been so fond of him, makes sense now. They really do match. This can't be real. Miles clutched his bloody mouth, wincing in pain. No. No, this is bullsh*t. You were nothing, Aaron. You lost to me back then. How the hell are you winning now? Claire grabbed his arm, trying to stop him. She glanced at me, eyes filled with a dozen unreadable emotions. She opened her mouth, but said nothing. Victor stepped forward, pointing at Miles. Get this man out of the building. Blacklist him. Everywhere. No company is to hire him again. You can't do this. Miles screamed, thrashing. I was hired under the family talent policy. I have a master's from a top university. You can't just fire me over some personal vendetta. I'll go to the press. I'll expose all of you. But even as he shouted, his voice cracked. Because he finally understood. He had lost. All the scheming in the world couldn't win Isabel's heart. And he would never be the man standing beside the CEO. There was a flicker in Miles's eyes, calculating, opportunistic. He had a new plan. You want me gone? Fine. But you'll pay me. And not some petty severance, I want real compensation. Enough to satisfy me. Or I go to the press. I'll expose Chandler Group for wrongful termination, violating labor laws. He was gaining confidence by the second. Didn't your company just enter talks for a major deal? Imagine the damage if a scandal hits now. You really want to risk that? Then he raised his voice even more. I want to negotiate directly, with Miss Chandler herself. Just the two of us. And in that moment, watching the way his eyes lit up, I realized. He still hadn't let it go. He was gambling for one last shot. A private moment with Isabel. Still fantasizing that somehow, if he could just get her alone, she'd fall in love with him. I looked at his face, smeared with blood, twisted in greed. And I couldn't help but remember the first time I met him. Claire had dragged me along to pick him up from the airport. He'd taken off his sunglasses and scanned me head to toe. Smirking as he said. So this is who you picked? Kinda looks like me. Back then, he was arrogant, smug. Now he was manic. Delusional. The contrast was jarring, even to me. Let alone to Claire. She stared at him with disbelief. Eyes clouded with sorrow and confusion. It was as if she were asking herself. Where did he go? The man I loved for all those years. What happened to him? But maybe that's just how time works. Maybe the versions of us that loved each other just got lost along the way. Isabel still hadn't said a word. Instead, she glanced calmly toward Pete, the HR director, who'd just arrived. Pete stepped forward, files in hand. Ms. Chandler, we looked into it. Miles's master's degree? It's fake. He did enroll at the university years ago. But he was expelled shortly after. Never graduated. Falsifying credentials alone is grounds for immediate termination. And just like that, the smugness drained from Miles's face. The color vanished from his cheeks. He stood frozen. As if the entire world had just crashed around him. Some of the employees, catching on, edged closer to Pete's folder. One of them gasped. Some reason? He got kicked out of school because he was caught fooling around, got himself into a sugar baby scandal, and the girlfriend showed up on campus. Huge mess. That's what got him expelled. No wonder he slung those accusations at Aaron so easily, it's literally his own story. Another colleague leaned in, eyes wide. Wait, he also had a gambling problem? Ran up massive debts and came crawling back to the States to dodge loan sharks. Claire spun toward Miles, her face a mask of disbelief. You told me you needed that $1 million for business cash flow. You said it was a short-term bridge loan. Was it all a lie? Just to pay off your gambling debt? For the first time, her voice cracked with utter devastation. Not just heartbreak. but revulsion. I gave up on Aaron for you, over and over again. And you deceived even me? Miles scoffed, not a hint of shame on his face. Who says I lied? You were the fool. Not my fault. He sneered. You think I'd waste my time on you if I hadn't overheard that your company had some family hire program? Only reason I kept you around was because you could bring me into Chandler Group. His tone sharpened, crueler now. If I'd gotten what I wanted, married into the right circles, leveled up my status, hell, I'd give you 10 million, no problem. But you couldn't even hold on to your man. He was ready to marry you, and you let him go. So really, you've got no one to blame but yourself. You lost him. Then he took what should have been mine. The room fell painfully silent. Claire didn't argue. She simply turned to look at me. Her eyes, filled with grief and regret, seemed to be asking the question she couldn't voice. Did I ruin everything? She whispered. That million. I was saving it for our future, Aaron. Her voice trailed off. But I lost you. A beat passed. Then Pete, the HR director, stepped forward, voice cold as steel. You didn't just lose him, Ms. Vance. During your time as head of Design Division 2, you repeatedly covered for Miles, reassigning his unfinished work to other team members. That meant others had to work overtime nearly every day, to make up for his incompetence. That's already grounds for negligence. He flipped another page. But worse, just 3 days ago, Miles submitted a design that was blatantly plagiarized from a competing firm. You failed to detect this, and in fact endorsed the submission, sending it directly to the client. Now that client is terminating their contract. You've damaged both the company's reputation and its bottom line. Given your prior contributions to Chandler Group's branch office, we're allowing you to resign voluntarily. Claire said nothing. She just stood there, still and quiet. Like someone who'd just realized the cost of loving the wrong man. I thought she'd try to defend herself. Beg for one more chance. No one cared more about her career than Claire, and I knew that better than anyone. But she simply nodded, calm and quiet. You're right. I brought this on myself. I'll submit my resignation immediately. And just like that, the farce ended. The crowd dispersed quickly. Everyone returned to their desks and resumed the rhythm of a normal workday. I didn't bother following what happened to Claire or Miles afterward. Legal would handle the fallout, and the appropriate departments would take over. As for my identity being revealed, sure, it made some of my coworkers uneasy at first. I noticed a certain caution in their eyes. But then I remembered how fiercely they had stood up for me that morning. How well we'd worked together over the past months. I figured whatever awkwardness remained would soon fade. That evening, on my way out of the building, I spotted Miles and Claire arguing on the sidewalk. Miles looked manic, desperate. Claire, you can't go see Aaron. I won't let you. Didn't you used to care about me more than anything? I'm saying yes now, okay? We can be together. Isn't that what you wanted? Claire yanked her arm free, eyes burning with disgust. Now I finally understand what Aaron must have felt. Being someone's backup plan. Being the consolation prize. Hurts more than I ever imagined. She took a breath, her voice soft but steady. Miles, yes. I loved you, for years. In my memory, you were always that boy on the field. Proud, sharp, self-disciplined. The boy who looked at me once, smiling, through a crowd. Even when you didn't return my feelings. I couldn't help but want to be near you. To do good things for you. She swallowed hard. When you came back, I hesitated. Something inside me whispered that you weren't the same anymore. But then you gave me hope. And I didn't want to give up on a dream I'd clung to for so long. Now I see the truth. I wasn't in love with you. I was in love with the version of you I couldn't have back then. The boy I couldn't reach. Her voice faltered, full of sorrow and clarity. But I don't love you anymore. Miles stood frozen. He had always believed Claire would wait for him. That she'd always be there, his safety net. Now the dream was gone. No rich fiancé. No corporate title. Not even Claire. All that remained were crushing debts and public disgrace. He unraveled. You too? You're leaving me too? No. I won't allow it. He lunged at her, dragging her toward the street. Arms wild, incoherent rage taking over. Claire broke free just in time. But Miles didn't. He stumbled into traffic. And was hit. He survived, barely. But he would spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. Claire resurfaced 2 weeks later. Aaron, she said, her voice low, I know there's no future for us. I just wanted a proper goodbye. She looked worn out, exhausted, almost, but her clothes were neat, carefully chosen. She wore a white dress. The same one she had on the very first day we met. Time had passed. She was no longer that girl who once stunned me at first sight. But when I looked into her eyes, pleading, vulnerable, I realized something. We'd never really had closure. She never believed me when I said it was over. All right, I nodded. 7 years. It deserved an ending. We sat across from each other in a quiet cafe. The silence stretched between us, until finally, she spoke. Just one question. If Miles hadn't come back, would you have married me? I took a sip of my coffee. It was black, bitter, but with a slow, surprising sweetness at the end. Yes. Her breath caught. But I wasn't done. And even with him back, if you had chosen me, fully and without hesitation, my answer would still have been yes. But I set my cup down gently. There are no ifs. I meant every word. I had truly let go. She blinked rapidly, stunned by how easily I'd answered. Her eyes began to well up. She tried to steady her voice, but it trembled anyway. I think I was in love with you long before I realized it. I regret everything. Losing you, like that, was the worst mistake of my life. I'm sorry. I won't bother you again. She stood suddenly, took a few steps, then paused. Without turning back, she said, Aaron, I hope you find happiness. Then she walked away. Her shoulders were shaking violently. She was crying. I was sure of it. Maybe she did regret it deeply. But feelings, once broken, don't pour back into the same cup. This was her consequence. For her indecision. That chapter, Claire's chapter, was finally closed in my life. A year later, Isabel and I got married. She insisted on signing a prenuptial agreement. If she ever wronged me in any way, she would walk away with nothing. No arguments. No compensation. Just leave. At the wedding, friends laughed and teased us from their tables. So? Are you happy? Someone called out. Isabel turned to look at me. Her eyes lingered, and then she smiled, soft, tender, sure. I married the boy who gave me a piece of candy when I was 5. The one with long eyelashes who looked just like a hero. I married the only man I've ever truly loved. Of course I'm happy. I froze, stunned. So all along, when she said she liked boys with long lashes, she had meant me? Why didn't you ever tell me? She chuckled, a little bashful. Maybe because I cared too much. I was afraid you'd say no, and then not even friendship would be left between us. But I guess we made it. Just in time. She leaned in closer, her voice lower, her smile like a warm breeze. Aaron, from now on, for all the seasons and every meal, I only want it to be with you. Applause erupted around us as we kissed. It was long, and sweet, and impossibly soft. Like every day I'd waited for this moment had finally found its answer. I whispered against her lips, smiling. You're really good at kissing. I love that. She laughed back. My husband's that easy to please? I suppose I was. But only because I loved her.